Welcome to the regular meeting of East Lansing City Council, Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021. Can we have a roll call?
Councilmember Babcock? Present. Councilmember Brookover?
Here.
Councilmember Watson?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gregg?
Here.
Mayor Bacon?
Present. I'll seek approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I'd ask that items 3.3 and 3.5 be removed from the consent agenda so that we can have some discussion on those.
Let's approve. Is this the time to move the items? Or do we wait till we get to the top?
I think this is when you typically do so, yes?
Okay. Second.
I'd like to remove item 3.7. I couldn't hear you, Councilmember Babcock.
I'd like to remove 3.7.
With that, Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the agenda with those changes.
What was your item again, Councilperson Brookover?
3.3 and 3.5.
Is your motion to also remove 3.7 from the consent agenda, Mr. Brookover?
As I said, with all those changes, I move to approve the agenda. Yes.
Thank you. Second.
Second by Councilperson Watson. All right. Agenda approved with the movement of items 3.3. Oh, vote, yeah.
So I think you need a motion to approve the new agenda, and then we need to vote.
Okay. All right. Motion to approve the new agenda.
That's the motion I made.
Okay, got it.
Okay?
Yep, his motion is properly pending. I think you need a vote.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. So we'll add item 3.3, 3.5, and 3.7 to the business agenda, respectively, as 4.2, 4.3, 4.4. All right. I'll move the motion to approve the minutes for multiple meetings. I move the approval of minutes for November 9th, 2021 regular meeting, November 16th, 2021 discussion only meeting, and the November 16th closed session meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. All right. On to written communications. All written communications received by council are posted on the online agenda packet. Those written communications need to be received by 4 p.m. in order to make it on to the online packet. Next, I'll look for communications from the audience.
Good evening. My name is Cheryl Connell-Marsh, and I'm a licensed wildlife rehabilitator and founder of Nottingham Nature Nook in East Lansing. I am speaking tonight against the planned deer cull in East Lansing parks this winter. After sending emails and a petition against the deer culls last year, I never received a response from either the city council or the mayor, and therefore I felt I needed to appear here before you tonight. I understand that I have a much different perspective on deer after raising orphaned and injured fawns over the past 10 years. I have watched the strong bonds that form between these fawns, and I've watched the older does quietly guiding these young fawns as they leave the safety of their enclosure and return to the wild. If you have stood and watched these gentle creatures as I have, you could never conceive of killing them. Last year, the deer culls included the East Lansing softball complex and Aquatic Center, which is less than 1/2 mile from my facility. Fawns are released here every fall. Despite the fact that I've been nominated twice for the East Lansing Crystal Award for community service, I was never contacted about these calls. Nottingham Nature Nook provides an important service to this community by caring for wildlife babies and injured adults that are found by East Lansing residents. We also provide the public with advice and education on the wildlife that they come in contact with. With such an important resource in your city, I am confused why you choose to kill the very animals that I am working tirelessly to save, instead of engaging me in a solution. In closing, I would like to say that killing these deer because they are a nuisance to some residents is unacceptable to me. Killing these deer by chasing terrified herds of them into sharpshooters that shoot and kill them is both cruel and morally wrong. Killing deer that are less than 1/2 mile from a fawn wildlife rehabilitation center is completely illogical. This council has an opportunity to show the community that they have both wisdom and compassion. My hope for humanity lies in your hands. Thank you for your time.
May I ask a question?
There's a question from council.
I was wondering where I can find the petition. You stated that you sent the petition to council. Okay, just, is anyone familiar with the petition?
I sent it to the city, it was in writing,
Mm-hmm.
so it had all the signatures on that petition.
Okay. And how many signatures did you have?
I believe we had roughly around 200.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional in-person?
Yeah, Alice Strager from East Lansing Info. When you find that, I would love to see it, because I don't think it showed up in council communications, and I would have expected that to show up in council communications. It's reminding me a bit of another thing that came in person as a citizen's petition and disappeared for months. I had one practical question. One is that the DDA approved this week a vote to pay for installation of security cameras, but the city staff memo said that it would then come to council for approval as a concept. And so I don't see it on the agenda this week. I was just wondering when that was coming. And then I just wanted to share concerns about transparency, besides the one I just learned about. I went to the Library Board of Trustees meeting this week to cover it for East Lansing Info, since my usual beat reporter for that, Emily Elliott, was away. And the Board of Trustees voted on a resolution to approve a contract with the newly unionized workers. The resolution itself was not made available. Orally, it referred to a contract which was also not released, and I was told by the library director I'm not allowed to have it. So basically, there was a vote on a written thing that I'm not allowed to see. This is like voting on a law I'm not allowed to see, and passing the law but telling me I can't see the law because the typos haven't been fixed yet. I could FOIA it, but if I FOIA it, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to get delayed, and I'm going to get denied, and then the city attorney is going to write a letter that is going to cost the taxpayers money, and I'm tired of that. So until council fixes this, this is not going to get fixed. So I want to, again, make a suggestion that you revisit your FOIA policy, but also that you send a much clearer message about what is supposed to be available to the public. I also want to suggest that work sessions stop being treated differently from regular council sessions. The fact that they're treated differently dates back many years, and there's a complex political history to that, but basically it was a way to not have cameras in the room and to make a lot of big decisions without the public being able to watch easily. That changed because Councilmember Altman decided to start, with the support of the rest of council, spending money to make the work sessions televised, which was great, because it meant they were recorded, and it also made them much more available to the public. So that was a really big step forward. But the question remains, why are they separated as work sessions? It does occasionally happen, I've seen it happen repeatedly, where votes are taken at work sessions. So it's not as if they are discussion-only meetings. Sometimes votes happen. And then what does happen, importantly, is there's this sort of consensus thing that happens at the meeting, which is totally legal. But it's sort of like a quasi-vote where then something ends up on the consent agenda. So my suggestion would be just call them council meetings. And if you're not planning to vote on something, that's fine. Say this is a discussion item. Make it a discussion item. There's nothing wrong with that. But just do it that way. One of the major effects of this will mean that instead of the council communications package being delayed another week or sometimes 2 weeks or even 3 weeks, depending on the schedule, we can see council communications promptly because then they will come to the work session agenda because it'll be a normal agenda. I don't know why those things aren't just shared on normal work session agendas, but they're not currently. So, for example, it meant a huge delay on us being able, and you being able to have that packet that you have today that shows all of these important communications about the stench in South Chesterfield Hills. Those are really important communications as you address the question how to spend ARPA funds. So here you were last week having a conversation about how to spend ARPA funds, and you lacked this huge stack of letters from people saying they've lived with this horrible smell for 20 years and arguing back and forth about when is this going to be dealt with. So, on the question of whether or not to spend $1 million making this room and other conference rooms in Hannah Community Center prettier or dealing with this quality of life issue that these folks have, it seems relevant. So my suggestion would be that there's not a good reason anymore to separate work sessions in this sort of artificial way from other sessions. If you want discussion items, you can absolutely have discussion items. Every agenda is allowed to have that. But stop making this artificial division and release the communication packages much earlier, as soon as you can, and include in them things like petitions that have 200 signatures. That would seem important. So that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other in-person comments? Anyone on the online system?
Benjamin, you are now permitted to address council. Benjamin, you may need to press *6 to unmute yourself. It doesn't look like the caller wants to speak.
Okay.
Oh.
All right, if no more communication from the audience, we'll move on to communications from mayor and council members. I'll start left to right. Councilperson Brookover.
Nothing. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilperson Babcock.
Yes, I would like to note the beginning of Hanukkah is coming soon, the 28th. It has been my hope that at some point we can have a menorah, and I know that there's been discussion about that. And a Christmas tree is not a religious symbol according to law, but a menorah is, reminding me of all those fond times I spent as a child at friends' house with their Hanukkah tree. Just kidding, it never happened. But I would like to acknowledge that there are many folks in this town who celebrate a lot of different holidays, including Diwali, which is a few weeks ago, and of course Christmas, which is my father, the former Catholic seminarian, used to call that great pagan tradition. I have noticed that one thing that unites us is we have lights and we have cookies at all of these events, so I am completely ecumenical. Anyone who wants to invite me to their event, I would be more than happy to come and share cookies. On a more serious note, I live with 2 teenage boys every weekend, and I can't imagine living with the stench of sewers. And I don't know what we need to do to fix this, but people just shouldn't have to live with that. So I don't know what it takes, but I would like to see from those who know what it would take to fix that and how much it would cost. And as I've said many times, this is a community. We look out for each other. So maybe it's not affecting my neighborhood, but I'm willing to pay as a member of the community to make repairs for that neighborhood. And at some point in the future, people in that neighborhood will be paying taxes to do something that improves my neighborhood. That's pretty much all. Thank you.
Councilperson Watson?
I think that's a great idea, Councilmember Babcock, about the manure. I wanted to say I'm trying my best to speak into the microphone. I can hear myself today, and I adjusted my microphone so that hopefully I project well. There was a communication we received, a written communication around 5:30, and I had wondered if that could be placed into the written communications, but I wasn't able to get a response back. I know it's a message that council can see, but I feel like it was an important message, and so I'm asking right now if it made it.
I was out of the office at the time that email came through, so I can certainly add it tonight, or I can wait till the next council meeting, so.
Okay. And it's relevant to our discussion on the business agenda. Okay. And then my last question is, speaking of the business agenda, in the order of things, it seemed like it made more sense that item 3.7 that was moved from the consent agenda come before item 4.1. Or does that not matter?
I think it makes more sense that way if it's my opportunity to weigh in.
So do you want to make the adjustment to the agenda? It seemed complicated.
Yes, I mean, if that makes, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I agree, makes sense to consider those two together, and there's nothing precluding you from moving to switch the order of that, if you'd like to do that.
Okay. Do I make a motion, or we're good?
Yeah, I would do it that way, since the other order was approved by motion, yes.
Okay. I would, yes, make a motion. I would like to make a motion to move item 4.2 to item 4.1 and item 4.1 to 4.2.
Second.
Before the vote, I might have lost track of the numbering, so for my own benefit, I apologize, but could we identify those not only by number, but maybe by what the subject of them is, so we're all on the same page?
Yeah, it's gotten kind of busy. Item 4.1 now would be approve a letter of agreement
Okay.
for 2040 Mayotte Road site. The new item 4.2 would be the original 4.1, consideration of application for Mayotte Road for LCC.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's what I was hoping the order was, but I wanted to make sure I had it right. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Gray?
I believe you need to vote on that motion, Mr.
Sorry, I
Mayor.
forgot that was even still out there. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Mayor Pro Tem Gregg?
I do not have anything for comment tonight, thanks.
All right, I'm up. First of all, happy Thanksgiving and safe holidays to everyone. It's a particularly challenging period as we're seeing a spike in COVID, and the timing could not be worse for this. So I just say everyone do your best to be safe and protect yourselves and your families, particularly those who are unvaccinated or have immunocompromised conditions. Just do your best to take care of each other and love each other the best that we can. Since we won't be here again until December 7th, I wanted to put the reminder out on the Winter Glow on December 4th, Saturday, 2 to 5 p.m., as well as, which will be, at that point, Green Friday, which will be December 3rd, and continued into Saturday, December 4th. So a whole bunch of stuff happening downtown with ice sculptures, which means it's going to be like 60 degrees, and a whole bunch of other cool stuff downtown. So come downtown and support the local businesses and spend time and money with family and enjoy that December 3rd and 4th. For myself, Friday, December 10th, my first Meet the Mayor at the library, 4 to 5 p.m. I'll do another reminder on the meeting at the 7th, but I may forget by then. So I will, I want to put that out there so you have an opportunity. Please come out and just have a conversation, just say hello. Looking forward to seeing people on that date. Second reminder on the boards and commissions, we put out oppressor, just to kind of attract people to the boards and commissions. I was having a conversation with an individual who was reading description on boards and commissions, and they were like, I'm not qualified for this, that, and the other. Then they went into their background. They had a background in PR marketing with an MBA, which somehow I don't know how they figured they weren't, comparable or able to be on one of our boards and commissions. It was mind-boggling, but I just want to make everyone aware you don't have to be an expert in the subject matter. Some of the boards and commissions are more technical, may require more expertise, but for the most part, your participation and your expertise will be utilized on the boards and commissions of your choice. So please feel free to put yourself out there and apply to various boards and commissions as we try to fill out the vacancies, and we look forward to working with you on that. And that, like I've said a million times, that includes students and young professionals. It's always good to have a different perspectives on those boards and commissions. That's it from us. City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of quick items. The first is that we are preparing an engineering estimate for repair or retrofitting of a number of sewer catch basins to address the issue of odor. It sounds like there are approximately, and I'm just going from memory, 14 catch basins that need to be retrofitted with sewer traps. If they can't be retrofitted, which some of them can't be, they'll need to be replaced. So I would expect to have a cost estimate and then hopefully begin that work yet this winter, this fall. If not this fall, it certainly will be high priority to address in the spring. So that's our plan, but I will keep council posted on the cost and dates of that project and also the neighborhood as well. I also did want to mention that my understanding, and I'm still looking through the written communication, is that the petition was actually posted to the online agenda with written communication on May 25, I believe. So I can go through and confirm that, but that's my understanding from the council secretary, is it was put on the agenda and posted on May 25th. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. City Attorney's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do not have anything to update council on tonight, but I do wish everyone a happy and safe Thanksgiving.
Thank you. This is going to be tricky now. On to the reading of the newly formed consent agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. We have the following items on the consent agenda for council's consideration. It's a lengthy one. Item 3.1, approve the following appointments or reappointments to boards or commissions. A, Amanda Jones to the Historic District Commission for a partial term ending December 31st, 2022. B, Lindsay Gray to the Historic District Commission for a full term ending December 31st, 2024. C, Michael Christensen to the Historic District Commission for a full term ending December 31st, 2024. D, Joshua Ramirez Roberts to the University Student Commission for a full term ending September 30th, 2022. E, Regan Duval to the University Student Commission for a full term ending September 30th, 2022. F, Jacqueline Beaupre to the University Student Commission for a full term ending September 30, 2022. G, David Brees to the University Student Commission for a full term ending September 30, 2022. H, Peter Dewan to the Economic Development Corporation for a partial term ending June 30, 2027. I, Tom Fehrenbach to the Economic Development Corporation for a corrected term ending June 30, 2022. J, Jeffrey J. Smith to the Economic Development Corporation for a corrected term ending June 30, 2024. K, Jill Felposh to the Economic Development Corporation for a corrected term ending June 30, 2025. L, Chanel Crouch to the Downtown Management Board for a corrected term ending December 31st, 2022. M, Daniel Bowman to the Planning Commission for a corrected term ending December 31st, 2023. N, George Lahanis to the Economic Development Corporation for a partial term ending June 30, 2026. Item 3.2, approve a contract to Sinclair Recreation, LLC in the amount of $32,112.92 for the supply and installation of outdoor fitness equipment in Bailey Park and approve up to $5,000 for a project contingency. Funds for the project will be provided by a $10,000 donation and the Parks and Recreation portion of the income tax. Item 3.3 was removed. 3.4, approve the assignment and assumptions of leases at 181 Division Street, parking lot number 10, to transfer ownership of retail leases at the property from the building authority to the city. Item 3.5 was removed. Item 3.6, approve the closure of Albert Street from the entrance of the Albert parking garage to MAC Avenue. Authorize the use of amplified sound and authorize the regulation of vendors for Winter Glow on December 4, 2021. Item 3.7 was removed. Item 3.8, approve an off-premises parking proposal for 215 River Street. Item 3.9, approve a resolution designating Nicole McPherson as the City of East Lansing's street administrator. Item 3.10, approve a resolution authorizing entry of participation agreements in partial settlement of the national prescription opiate litigation. Item 3.11, approve a resolution authorizing entry of state, local government interstate agreement concerning allocation of settlement proceeds in the national opioids litigation. Item 3.12, introduce and refer to Planning Commission Ordinance 1509, a request to rezone 218 and 224 West Lake Lansing Road from RA Residential Agricultural District to B5 Community Retail Sales Business District. Those are all the items on the consent agenda for council's consideration.
I move the approval of the consent agenda as stated on the record.
Moved by Brookover, second by Babcock. Do we lose Dana?
I think we've got a quorum, we can
Okay.
vote on it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries for the consent agenda. On to the new item 4.1, formerly item 3.7, approval, a letter of agreement for 2040 Mayotte Road site.
Good evening, everyone. So my name is Peter Menser. I'm the Planning and Zoning Administrator here for the city. Appreciate the opportunity to address you all tonight and answer any questions you might have about this agenda item. First, I just want to get you kind of from the origin of this project to today. So this was a development that was approved by City Council back in 2019. It's the development of a parcel on Mayotte Road at 2040. And there's three aspects of the project: a medical marijuana provisioning center, a 4-story, 107-room hotel, and then an 8,600 square foot multi-tenant commercial center with a drive-through window. So that was approved back in August of 2019. Those approvals are valid for 1 year, got a special use permit, valid for 1 year, and we received 2 6-month extensions from the Planning Commission that's tasked with considering extensions and approving those. And that brings us to August of 2021. In the final weeks of the project, as is sometimes typical of these projects, as the deadline approaches, there are items that are submitted. In this case, there's a general disagreement between staff and the developer of the project as to whether or not they satisfied all 27 conditions of the special use permit approval stemming from that 2019 site plan and special use permit. The deadline to submit everything was August 13, 2021, and there were a lot of items related to that, as you can imagine. What we're at now, and I will defer at some point to the city attorney to explain further, but basically there's a disagreement as to whether those items were received in a timely manner. So what we're proposing, based on city attorney's advice, is to consider a letter between the city and the developer, and I've outlined in the staff memo here what the letter would establish. So I'm just going to review that really quickly. It would establish a phasing plan, and actually, Ms. Gordon, could you put up the PowerPoint that I had earlier? In an effort not to confuse things, I'm going to focus first on the letter agreement, and then I know the land division is going to come after that. But as Emily's doing that, basically there are a couple things that were done here. So it establishes a phasing plan. So the special use permit, when it was approved, while there were 3 big components of the project, there weren't any dates associated with any of them. So what this does is it would establish deadlines for each project. So the provisioning center would be number 1. Well, first it establishes phases and then establishes submittal deadlines for each of them. Phase 1 would be the provisioning center, construction of the provisioning center. Phase 2 would be the hotel, and what we're doing with this agreement is attaching a deadline for building permit submittal of September 1, 2022. And then phase 3 would be the multi-tenant shopping center that has the drive-through window, and that would be required to be a building permit required to be submitted by on or before March 1st, 2024. And those are all laid out in the plan that was provided, or in the phasing plan that's provided by applicant that's in your packet. Second thing this agreement does is allows the developer to move ahead with the construction of the provisioning center. That's phase one, so the city would issue the building permit for them to start on the project. Number three, it would rescind the special use permit approval of phases 2 and 3 based on the dates that I mentioned before. So, for example, if a building permit is not submitted, in this case, by September 1, 2022, to start phase 2, the approval for phase 2 and phase 3 would be rescinded, and to continue with that project, the developer would need to come back to City Council with a new special use permit application to go back through the process. And the fourth thing this letter establishes is requires the submittal of access and utility easements across the project, across the parcels in the project. This is pretty boilerplate. This is something that we would require in most cases, but they weren't established during the original approval, and this was an opportunity to get them to be a part of the project. Our city attorney may have items that they'd like to fill you in on. I'm purposely not talking about the land division yet to tackle that since it is under a separate agenda item. What we're asking for tonight is for you to approve and authorize the manager to sign this letter agreement between the city and the applicant.
City Attorney?
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just add on a bit to what Mr. Menser said. As was indicated, there were 2 extensions granted by the Planning Commission, which brought that expiration date up to August of 2021. Back in February of 2021, staff advised developer that there were still documents, conditions that were outstanding. At least 3 of those items came in within the week before that August deadline. So they'd received a letter in February, the documents did not come in until up to that deadline, which did not allow city staff enough time, obviously, to review those items, approve them, get all the permits in place, and for the developer to begin construction, which is really what is supposed to happen before that expiration date. So that's the point where I got involved, where the developer certainly wanted to proceed with this project, but we had a timing problem where we're coming up on that deadline. And so the developer, through legal counsel, represented by an attorney, took the position that since they submitted the documents, they had satisfied what they needed to do, regardless of whether staff had sufficient time to review it and grant any necessary approvals. All of this has been communicated between my office and their office, and we've reached a letter agreement subject to approval of this council to allow them to move forward despite what we considered 11th hour submission, at least, of those items. Avoid the possibility of litigation over it, and ultimately they could have reapplied anyway, so the city might have wound up back in the same spot anyway, even if we deemed it expired. They came and got approval again, it would just take more time, both on staff's part and the developer's part. So the advantage to the city in this resolution is not only to avoid the time, expense, and hassle of litigation, but also, as Mr. Menser indicated, to set forth these timelines now where we have clear expectations with the developer of what must be done when and what the consequences are if those things are not done. And they are on board with this and are ready to sign this agreement if it is approved by council tonight.
Any questions from council? Councilperson Babcock?
So that 2019 agreement precedes every single person at this table except Mr. Lahanas. And
Excuse me.
you weren't on council then.
I'm sorry.
2019,
I
yeah.
misheard you, I'm sorry.
I know. Well, we're the old codger wing
I
down here, but
misheard.
we're here for that. What are the 27 items? I mean, we've never seen that as a starter, so that what those are could have a big bearing on our decision.
May I? Yeah. So there were conditions of the special use permit and site plan, and a lot of them are just boilerplate. The applicant shall submit a site plan. They will,
Landscaping
complete.
bond,
Yeah,
yeah.
landscaping. They will complete a lot of items related to engineering, a lot of technical items related to engineering. So not necessarily policy items, but items just related to outstanding thing. The site plan needs to be revised to show the car charging stations and something like that.
Is there a copy of this somewhere?
It's certainly
It's
in the
your,
city's-
yeah, it says an attachment to
Is it
in
in
the
the
memo in the packet.
And I'll say, although the members of city council may change, it was still approved by city council, so the fact that new people have been elected does not, undo the action taken, which I know Councilmember Babcock, but I think I'm not sure that it's that the project is anew before the council for initial approval, certainly, and I think you understand that as well.
I was just thinking that we'd like to know. I'm not arguing that we should undo it. I'm suggesting that, it's the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, and clearly, I think members of the public were caught off guard by this as well, so we'd like to make an informed and educated decision, and that would include knowing what the 27 items are.
They're in the packet.
Thank you.
Yeah, 1 second.
Councilperson Watson?
Who chose the phases?
Excuse me?
Who chose the phases?
They were established by the developer. So that was the order in which they are intending to proceed with the project. And I believe that was the order they have always intended to proceed. It's just now they're formalized and established in an agreement.
Councilperson Brookover?
Counselor, am I correct in this letter agreement, there's no release of anybody's claims on either side, is that correct?
Correct.
So the consequence of this is just a sort of a timeout, but if everything goes to hell in a handbasket, the developer still has all of their claims about how we allegedly did this, that, or the other thing wrong, and we have all our claims against them, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Brookover.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now that I've got the 27 points. Which ones were they late on?
Certainly, Councilmember Babcock. It was the construction staging plan, the signed memorandum of special land use permit, and the landscaping bond.
How much time would it normally take city staff to review that? City staff has many things to do, so.
Yeah. So the biggest thing that takes the most time is probably the staging plan, because we wanted to coordinate with our engineering staff to ensure that if you notice in the plan, it's in the pack, I don't want to, it's not the size we can see right now, but there were a specific utility layout that we wanted our engineering department to sign off on prior to moving ahead.
Okay. And have you been able to do that?
Yes. Yes, we have done that since then. Our team is on board with the phasing plan and the utility layout.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Gray?
I just had a clarifying question. The 27 conditions, were those applicable to all 3 phases of the project or just the first provisioning center?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Pencer in the sense that I don't think City Council's approval defined it by phase. This was always the sequence of development, but I don't think the original application used the word phrase.
That is correct, yes. So when the project came through, it was approved all as one. So
Okay.
all the conditions in here apply to all 3 of the portions of the project, at which time we're not broken down by phase, but which we're hoping to do so moving forward.
So right now, we have the site plan for the hotel, we have the site plan for the shopping center, we have all of the plans and conditions for all 3 phases.
That is correct.
now?
We have all the
Okay.
information we need
We're
on this
just not
project.
planning on having them all built concurrently. They're going to be phased. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
I guess I have one more question. Council, so the provisions of the letter agreement with regard to what I'll inartfully call the deadlines, okay? Are those self-executing?
Well, city staff would certainly communicate those, and we would deem this enforceable. So if they said, we missed our deadline, we say you're expired, and they say, no, we're not, we're going to build anyway, then the city would be in a position where it may need to go to court and say, look, they agreed to these deadlines, this is the consequence. But I don't think the developer would take the position that they are not bound by deadlines that they signed to in the letter
Yeah.
agreement.
Well, so in other words, the answer is, no, they're not self-executing, and we'd have an argument about that at that point in time if there was litigation.
I'm not sure there's an argument by I'm not sure, I guess, what you mean by self-effectuating. They would expire, yes. We would notify them. We wouldn't try to, I guess I'm not sure what your question is. There's no, additional action necessary. They expire by the terms of the letter agreement. My thought is staff has a good line of communication with the developer, and we have a line of communication with their council, and we would certainly keep in touch with them about that if those deadlines did pass.
Yeah, thank you.
One point of clarification, if I may. I believe our memo misstates the order of the phases, and I may have verbally said it wrong too. So phase 1 is the provisioning center. Phase 2 would be the retail center with the drive-through window. Phase 3 would be the hotel. I apologize for that error.
And that's the order they're in the letter
And
agreement.
that should be in the letter and as shown on the phasing plan.
Councilperson Watson?
Do you know how many square feet Pleasantries is?
I do not. I can get that information for you. I do not know now.
Would you say approximately, 7,000 or half of that, or
Maybe 5?
5,000 maybe? Okay.
Yeah.
And did anyone bring up how close these were to each other?
So I came on the staff, I'll punt a little bit on this. I came on staff in April. I know those conversations happened probably over a long period of time amongst the council preceding these projects even coming to the special use permit phase.
Because sometimes I've seen when similar businesses are opening up to really close to each other, that maybe there's some conversations or some heads up, like how is this going to impact the other business?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are setbacks.
I could just maybe point folks to the right direction, which was there were setbacks or spacings between provisioning centers, except if it was for a parcel, I believe, that was prior to owned by the city. So I think that there was a special discussion about the fact about that parcel that was different from the other parcels. So I think we may have to look back at that history and see what the council action was at that point.
Thanks.
Councilperson Babcock?
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, but as long as we're on square footage, can anyone give me the square footage of the Target downtown? I'm trying to figure out what 7,000 square feet is.
It's about 22,000 square feet. Now, did you say 76 or 7,000 square feet? I'm sorry, but it's 22,000 square feet for the Target downtown, is the entire footprint, I think.
Okay, so this would be a third of that size. I'm just trying to put together a visual. One of my concerns is that part of the backstory of this property is it was an old DPW site, and there were concerns about environmental contamination. I don't think environmental contamination came up at the discussion at the October 27 Planning Commission, which I think is actually the subject of the other discussion about this property. But as long as we're talking about development and phases, has there been discussion about environmental remediation at this property?
Absolutely. I may ask the applicant to fill you in on that. So there is a due care plan that was submitted by the applicant as required per the conditions of the SUP approval. The details of which, Andy, do you want to speak to that? Sure. So the applicant is here. If you don't mind, I'll defer to him to explain the environmental work that's been done and that will take place.
Hi, good evening. Can everybody hear me? My name's Andy Andre from Avanti Development Group, 330 Enterprise Court, Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. So, Commissioner Babcock, I could probably lend a little bit of history to this because I was been involved with the project since the inception, from the original Planning Commission meeting through the City Council meetings, and then most recently the October Planning Commission meeting as well. So environmental conditions are a great concern as part of this property. And so the environmental investigations were conducted, a phase 2 was conducted, a baseline environmental assessment was filed with the state as well. And as part of that, we have a due care plan. Due care plan meaning how do we go about the safety and protocol as far as the project is concerned, and how do we implement that during construction. All of that has been completed. We did submit copy of the due care plan, which is really that pathway for how do we go about the remediation onto the property. We've supplied that to city staff and to the attorney as well. So all of that is taken into account, even to the effect that I can tell you we had a conference call yesterday with our environmental consultant about the protocols that go along with the due care plan and the safety training that will go and be part of it as contractors move forward on the project.
Forgive me, have we seen that due care plan?
Yep.
You have not seen the due care plan. It was a condition of approval to be submitted to staff, so staff we do have that plan, but it has not been submitted to council.
I would be interested in seeing it at some point. Thank
We
you.
could send it as a FYI if that's,
Thank you.
consult with the manager on that.
Thank you. Because I wonder how much remediation the site will require.
Sure. Let me give you a little brief discussion of there was the contamination that was identified onto the property. Our plan is to limit that removal of the soil. It's within the soil. It was not identified into the groundwater itself. No groundwater was encountered during the investigations. And so it's limited to the soil. And for the most part, it's in the upper 10 feet, I can tell you, of the soil. Not uncommon to what the former use was.
Right.
And so we're taking special precautions within those areas. As I mentioned, we had a call with our environmental consultant and how we deal with this. Because if you think about it, as we dig footings, as we put pipe in the ground, we are going to be encountering that material. And so we're developing those protocols, and they're spelled out. The due care plan is a larger aspect of this is what you must do. Now we're getting into the details of the protocol of how we go about implementing it.
Can you give us a shorthand guess as to what's there?
The contamination?
Sure, yeah.
I probably couldn't spell some of the things that are there and pronounce it, but for the most part, it's like I said, it's limited to the soil, so we have a plan and how to deal with that. There's two ways really of dealing with it. You can do a waste characterization and you can haul it off to a landfill. The other option is that you maintain that on site. Our first preference would be to maintain that on site, and we have areas that we can do that. Now, when it goes to beyond that, and we say the contamination, there are some volatiles. I do know that there's some volatile organics, so they're going to vaporize. So we're making provisions within our building plans under our slab of our building to capture those and provide a venting system.
I actually have another question for staff. Sorry, I was just one last.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I'm not familiar with this, so what are the usual timelines or deadlines that would accompany a special use permit in East Lansing?
Yep, special use permits are good for 1 year, and they typically get there's one year extension that can be granted by the Planning Commission. In this case, that was divided into 2 6-month periods. That's not typical, but it's not out of the ordinary that may be done. So 1 year, 1 year extension.
Okay. Is there a reason why there just wasn't a third year extension or a third 6-month extension?
Our ordinance does not allow that. So our ordinance specifically states that there's the original approval is good for 1 year, and then they're allowed to have one year approval. Otherwise, they have to come back for a new. So it doesn't grant Planning Commission or City Council the ability to extend it any further than that.
Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilperson Watson?
Okay, so my question more is for you, Andy. When did you realize that there was another provisioning center, within under 1,000 feet from where you were going to build?
Sure. I think you had brought that up and you said, what are those impacts, right? I don't think in the grand scheme of things, you look and you go, when you see a McDonald's, there's usually a Burger King. When you see a Rite Aid, there's a Walgreens. Those types of things, the impacts, I think, of the business probably aren't as great as, what are anticipated, because things tend to do that. When you see, we have a hotel that's planned as part of this. When you see hotels, you tend to see them grouped or what have you. That could be ordinance-driven, it could be market-driven. So in this case, you know, we had the property working with the city on the city-owned property, and when the other development came into effect, I'm not really sure. But at the same time, I don't feel that based on the locations, based on you know, the products that we will have, I don't see there being a conflict. In any event, tends to drive business as well.
For both of you.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I've asked questions about our provisioning centers or our licenses throughout East Lansing, and only 5 can be in existence. And so I think it's so interesting that we've managed to decide that 2 should be in such a close vicinity of each other. And what I think about is like when Whole Foods came to town and what happened to Foods for Living, if you're familiar. But it was a grocery store, similar, and they essentially lost a lot of business.
Sure.
Councilperson Babcock?
Also, I'd note that McDonald's and Burger King aren't dealing with controlled substances, and I'm not familiar with the Marijuana Act as I should be, but I know that when you've got alcohol providers, they cannot be within a certain distance. Is that also true of the Marijuana Act?
No.
Okay, thanks.
Any further questions? If there's no further questions, I'd look for a motion.
I move that we approve the letter agreement for 2040 Mayotte Road Site Plan Special Use Permit.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilperson Brookover, second by Mayor Pro Tem Gregg. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. On to item 4.2, formerly 4.1.
Well, oh, okay. Sorry, did we just all discuss all of that at the same time, or no?
It's just the letter agreement and not the land use.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, we're moving, this is the new, we're moving to 4.2, formerly 4.1, consideration of the application. All right. Item 4.2.
Thank you. Hey, this is Peter again. Thanks for the opportunity to speak here on this land division. So this is a request for a land division to divide the parcel that we've just been talking about at 6.42 acres in size into 3 separate parcels. So I just wanted to go over, I don't know how well you can see the screen, but if you could somewhat tune into that. So like I said, this is a request to divide 1 parcel into 3, 6.4 acres right now. I added the numbers up. There's some right-of-way in there, so those numbers might not be exact, but the result would be 3 parcels, 1 0.7 acre parcel and 2 almost 3 acre parcels. I do want to just note the limited scope of review for land divisions for municipalities, and it's really you're focused on, does the parcel comply with the minimum lot area standards? So that would be the minimum size of the parcel, the amount of frontage it has on a street, and then the lot depth. And then actually the city also has another provision related to lot depth to width ratio, and that's also covered in here. I just want to show, if you can see, Emma, if you could just scroll down, if you don't mind, to the number 2. So if you can see, this is my elementary tab to just trying to show what the parcel is. So it's 1 parcel right now, and you can see on the right there are 3 black lines. On the far left, there's the provisioning center. At the top of the page would be the 4-tenant shopping center, and at the bottom of the page would be the hotel. So this request is related to, but certainly independent of the development project. This proposal to divide the properties could happen with or without the moving forward on the developments we just talked about. So I've reviewed these proposal. The parcels do comply with the standards of the underlying B2 zoning district. And in this case, the B2's district does not require minimums for lot area, lot frontage, or lot depth. The parcels do comply with the 2.5 to 1 lot depth ratio. That means it cannot be deeper than it can be than it is wide. It can't be 2.5 times deeper than it is wide. And then the parcels, each of the 3 parcels they do have lot frontage on a public street. They are accessible either via direct curb cut or an easement. And those are the easements I was talking about when we were talking about the letter agreement, establishing those so that all parcels in the project are accessible. And then and another condition that was added a couple years ago when the Land Division Act changed is they have to be current on all taxes for the last 5 years and have no tax liens on the property, and that is the case with this parcel. So we provided a motion to approve the Land Division, subject to the items in the referral letter from the Planning Commission. We did add a 5th condition, and you'll see it was in the letter agreement as well, and that's for the developer to prepare and record an easement or easement agreement for utility access to the property. And we do have a deadline in here, but it's intended to just establish that this is something that we do need to have turned in, and the developer is cognizant of this proposal and is willing to provide the information that we need.
What page number is in our materials is the proposed motion, please?
Oh, gosh. I may need some help with this one. I've got all kinds of different pages on my screen.
Is it maybe page 5? Maybe page 5 of 39?
I've got it on page 274.
Yeah, I don't have that many pages.
Me neither.
I see. Are you looking for the staff proposed motion language, Mr. Brookover?
Yes, ma'am.
I have it on the agenda item report for that, but I clicked over, so it's
I
the
do have
first
it on the
page.
screen right
Yeah.
now, too, if anyone's curious.
Yeah, well, I can't see the screen from here,
Okay.
that's the problem.
Fair enough.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I have it now. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have it on page, isn't it on page 1?
Can I ask a question while Mr. Brookover's finding that? So I guess this is maybe more pertinent to the previous discussion item, but what would happen, since all of this was approved under the one SUP, what would happen in terms of accountability to the developer if they moved forward with one phase and then failed to complete the additional 2 phases? Is there something within our process that would offer some surety there, or it's their project and they kind of manage it?
I want to restate the question and ensure I'm answering the right one.
Sure.
So you're asking what would happen to the subsequent phases if one of them does not get submitted on time?
I was thinking just constructed in general.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So if they built phase 1 and the next deadline came along, no building permit was submitted, everything expired from that on, that would, essentially nothing. So then the
Okay.
provisioning center would stand on its own. The other property may be at some point available for a future person to come along and propose something on it, whether it's the same items we've seen tonight or something different.
Okay, so I guess my only potential opposition to this lot split is, I want to make sure that this is being represented accurately to what we will eventually see built on this site. So unfortunately, that means questioning the developer's integrity a little bit. Hopefully, they will not take it personally. I'm concerned that one possible reason for this would be to get the provision center built and then to have 2 additional parcels of land that could be sold, if the intention was not to complete the entire project. So I guess I'm asking for the developer to offer me some surety there.
Thank you again. Andy Andre from Avanti Development Group, 330 Enterprise Court, Bloomfield Hills. Yes, that's a very good question. So as that, I think, goes to the heart of why we looked at the phasing of it. So initially, I think we had looked at, even though I know we talked about it, it goes in conjunction with the land division that we're asking for. So we had always intended to develop the property in a sequential manner. We're not going to build all 3 at one time. And so I think what happened there was a little bit of a gap, and it said, how are you going about doing that? And that never was, I think, fully addressed either through the Planning Commission or with council at that time. And so that's where the heart of it came to, and we said we have to do this. And as part of that phasing plan that's now, that will be memorialized with the agreement, it kind of goes hand in hand with the lot splits. And so our agreeance to the letter agreement kind of binds us to moving forward in that manner. If we chose not to do that, I think it'd be, not the right thing to do. And the reason why I say that is we're already, we feel very confident, obviously, on the first phase. The second phase, we already have targeted. We've already been developing building plans on that, I can tell you that. and we're already starting to market that as well. So we see it as being a logical next step.
Can I just clarify, phase two
Sure.
is the 4-unit?
That is the retail.
Retail,
Yes.
okay.
Yep. And so I think, it's one of those situations where build it and they will come. That tends to be, and right now, that the retail market is driven to the smaller inline stores, and then we also did have an end cap provision there. I think that will really go over well. And once you do that, and you see this in a number of different locations, you tend to see the retailers will come in. So we have begun to market that to some national and regional retailers for that, because we feel that, number one, it's a great location. Secondly, as part of that whole development, I think it integrates in very well.
And can I ask, have you developed similar properties?
Yes. Yes, we have.
Okay.
Yep.
And do you have a partner for the hotel, or is that going to be self-labeled?
So as part of the current ownership group in the application, they have hotels within their portfolio.
Okay.
And so there's a number of hotels, and that's what really facilitated looking towards what that use would be. I think as part of the initial submittal, I know it says 107-room hotel. It was initially planned as a IHG product, Holiday Inn Express, and so there's good relationships within the hospitality market with the applicants.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councilperson Babcock?
Thanks. Just curious, most of the environmental contamination was in the northern part of that triangle, correct? The 6.4 acres? Somebody?
I believe it's a little bit contained within the central and northwestern portion of the property.
So mostly lot 3 or mostly lot 2?
I believe it spreads across the corner of lot 1, some of lot 3, and then into 2.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Mayor, could I make an unsolicited comment?
Go ahead.
I just want to emphasize something Mr. Menser said in talking about the standards. And I just want to point out that under the Land Division Act, a complete application for proposed division shall be approved if it meets the requirements of the statute and the ordinance. So there is somewhat less discretion in reviewing this kind of request as opposed to certain other things that come before council.
I move we approve a land division application from Mayotte Road LLC for the property at 2040 Mayotte Road to divide the property into 3 smaller parcels contingent on the 4 conditions listed in the referral letter dated November 17th, 2021, and a new 5th condition proposed by staff that states as follows. Number 5, the developer must prepare and record an access or easement agreement for utility access to the property in a form acceptable to the city on or before December 15th, 2021, unless the parties agree in writing to a later date for recording. The agreement must ensure that all parcels of the property following any approved land division have access to public utilities.
Second.
Moved by Councilperson Brookover, second by Councilperson Watson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Carries unanimously. We're in a weird time slot here. Would anyone like a brief break right here, or else we're probably going to push right through? All right. Yep. Can we sit here for a 5-minute bathroom break? Welcome back. We'll now proceed with item 4.3, formerly item 3.3 on the consent agenda. Approve a consulting service contract with Mayotte Group Architects in the amount of $70,800 for architectural design, construction, administration services for the renovation of East Lansing Fire Station Number 1.
I just really had one question on this, and maybe with council present, we can take care of it pretty quickly. So I'm looking at the July 16th, 2021, I guess it's the proposal addressed to Ms. Longpre. And I'm looking at, in my book, it's page 111, which has a limitation of liability on it. And council, understand I'm just a poor country lawyer, so maybe I misread this the first time around. And now that I look at it again, I think I understand it, but if you could clarify for us, it says, except with respect to those matters covered by the insurance required herein, which is not in this document, I guess, except with respect to the indemnity provisions to the fullest extent permitted by law, and notwithstanding any other provision of this agreement, the total liability in the aggregate of the consultant and the consultant's yada, 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 from any cause or causes shall not exceed the total compensation received by the consultant under this agreement. So does that mean their total liability is the $41,000? Or does that mean something else?
So their liability is the contract price, but they could also have liability to the extent it's covered by insurance. So their out-of-pocket, other than what's covered by insurance, would be limited to that, and other than indemnification, which is provided, I think, a couple paragraphs up.
Okay, but the indemnification tracks Michigan law in the sense that they're only indemnifying us from their sole negligence, correct?
Correct, sole negligence or willful misconduct.
Okay, and it's my recollection that there's a pretty reasonable argument under the law that we don't have the ability to indemnify them. And
Correct. Oh, sorry to speak over you. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. And aren't we doing that here?
So what we provide in these, and we talk with this with staff quite frequently, is that Michigan law is unclear. There's some case law that goes both ways. I can send that to you if you'd like. So we always recommend that the city put in that the city can only indemnify to the extent permitted by law. Whether the city wants to agree to that is always, of course, up to the city, but we like to see that language. Sometimes if it's in a contract, for $300 in a form contract for a large vendor, it's not always feasible, or they can't always get the agreement to make that modification. But we generally do recommend that, and I'm sure staff could vouch for me that I'm often saying that to them. And I
Okay.
see nods in the audience confirming that.
All right, so let me just go back on this, please. So, taking a situation in which I will refer to it inartfully as mixed negligence, okay? In that situation, the only liability they have is the contract price, correct?
And the extent of their insurance, yes.
Well, I mean, and it's not self-evident here, but the insurance, their insurance is whatever their insurance is. Do we have a specific
Well,
requirement?
Typically, there is an insurance requirement, so they have to maintain $1 million of insurance, and that's on page 91 of 93. So the way I read that is if there were a claim, it could exceed the contract price to the extent of their insurance, but their out-of-pocket would not exceed, by which I mean out-of-pocket, what's not covered by insurance is going to be limited to the contract price.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? I have a comment, probably directed at city manager or staff, kind of going forward on this issue more broadly. Mentioning of ARPA dollars and obviously future infrastructure dollars and doing these types of surveys on some of the potential projects. I could foresee where this becomes very challenging as everyone begins to seek these surveys, and I'm assuming just like materials, the prices of these types of services are going to go up exponentially here in the near future. I could ask this probably to George. Do we have a strategy around how we're going to approach, some of the bigger potential projects, or what we're going to do to kind of stay ahead of that wave?
Well, like this project, we're seeking engineering contracts on some of the ones where we simply know we have to do the work, and then there's a sense of urgency to it. Obviously, if council were to come back and say it should be covered by ARPA dollars, we would do that. If it's not, it would be by general fund. But these are obviously things like the repairs to the fire station that have been long-standing, much-needed repairs that have been a part of our capital improvement plan. So that's why we're looking for engineering services to sort of move it along. But of course, it would be general fund dollars until the point if council were to select it for ARPA, then we could reimburse the general fund with ARPA dollars.
I think my concern is almost the opposite of that. I think there's be it state dollars, be it the infrastructure package, be it Build Back Better, whichever way it comes, or ARPA, I think it's going to be coming in different buckets and that kind of thing. And do you think we'll be able to, do the sites or the things rapidly enough as they start to earmark? And I think that's going to be tricky.
I do think that we have enough projects probably in backlog that we'll be able to begin moving a lot of projects if we get the money. I think that probably the bigger portions of money in infrastructure will go to things like roads and water and sewer and wastewater plant, where there are large needs and large infrastructure dollars. So we'll be able to spend, if we are fortunate to get a large amount of money, we will be able to spend a large amount of money on infrastructure. I think when you get to things like buildings like a community center, you're going to get to much greater restrictions, and it's going to be much narrower that they're not going to let you spend it on that type of a project. So that's where I think the ARPA dollars come in as being more flexible dollars and the most valuable to us in that respect.
Yep.
I move we approve the consultant services contract with Mayotte Group Architects in the amount of $70,800 for architectural design and construction administration services for the renovation of East Lansing Fire Station Number 1.
I'll second that.
So moved by Councilperson Brookover, second by Mayor Pro Tem Craig.
I just want to say for the record, for discussion, this does not signal my eventual agreement to make any of these changes. So I just don't want to be misinterpreted on that score. I'm going to want to look at that line by line when and if that happens. So.
Sounds good. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. On to item 4.4, formerly item 3.5 on the consent agenda. Approval change order number 4 in the amount of $100,096,666 for C2AE Architecture and Engineering for the public library.
So I created the problem tonight on this, and you say water in the city of East Lansing right now, it sort of gets the antenna up. And so in the agenda item report, it's not clear who wrote this, and which is irrelevant anyway. So the background information says, water is seeping into the building and soaking a significant portion of the carpet in various areas of the building. The replacement of the windows and the repair of the limestone on the curtain wall and other areas around the building, quote, should eliminate the issue, end quote. Who says that? And do we have any assurance of that? Because, as to quote Everett Dirksen, or paraphrase him, $196,660 here, $196,660 someplace else, pretty soon you're talking real money. So I'm not interested in investing in windows and limestone unless we have some specific expert review that's saying to us, that's going to fix it. And then in addition, that segues back into the discussion I had on the other item, which is if somebody's going to guarantee for us that that's going to fix the water, and that's in the contract, then I'm okay with that. But I'm sure not getting the impression that anybody's guaranteeing that this is a fix. I don't see anything in here that tells us that, that's all.
I could actually call Ms. Longpree up to talk about it, or Mr. Shelley, either one.
Hello, Council. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to explain a little more about this project. Unfortunately, there really are no guarantees in life. We have a consultant on this project, a C2AE, and they have architects on their staff who have looked at this issue. And this is an issue whether it completely fixes the problem or not. And what I mean by that is, as you walk along the front of the library, there are areas where the seal in the windows have broken, and you can feel heat coming out, and you can see coolness coming in. So this needs to be fixed. Whether or not it completely resolves the water problems, I can't guarantee that. But to the best of our knowledge, and under the recommendation of our engineering consultant, we believe that this will correct the issue that we are having.
Do we have a report from the engineering firm in this staff material?
Not in the staff material presented to you. No, there isn't.
I appreciate I appreciate what you're saying, but the reality is, you're going on the advice from somebody else, and we're not seeing that expert advice, that's all.
And we can share with you the information that we have received from them if you like.
Mayor Pro Tem Gregg?
Can I ask the duration of the problem? I mean, is this something that has developed recently, or is this something that has been an ongoing problem? I guess trying to kind of narrow down whether it's related to the windows or not.
It is an ongoing problem, but it became very apparent while we were closed to the public, because we were walking on that carpet far more and seeing the water seep up. We do know it's not coming from the ground, so when we had the engineers in several times, this is also coupled with not just fixing the limestone and the windows, but also enhancing the air handling units that we originally purchased, and they're going to add additional items to that, such as dehumidifiers. So, but it has been an issue for several years, and it just has got really bad and very noticeable in the last year. And we can actually see holes through the building. So, and those windows are from 1962, as I assume the limestone is.
Additional questions? If there are no additional questions, I'll seek a motion.
I'll move approval of change order number 4 in the amount of $196,660 from Gordon Construction Services to update their contract for the site improvements at the East Lansing Public Library, to include windows and limestone replacement around the building, as well as to approve an additional amount of $30,000 for contingency costs.
Second? Anywhere? I'll second. Carries out. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Gregg, second by Mayor Bacon. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1. And before we were at the point where we adjourn, just a quick question on the earlier point, and I'll send this to the city manager. A little bit more information on that Chesterfield question that was posed earlier. Not now. I'd like a little bit more extensive information around that.
You're talking about the sewer traps?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll be getting information to council shortly, as soon as engineering can provide us with that information of how many culverts and repair estimates and repair timeframes. I'll get that all to council.
And since it was brought to the public, it could be an agenda item even at some point.
We
for
certainly
discussion.
can. We can provide an update in 2 weeks if it's done by that point, and provide an update during my city manager comments, or have Ms. McPherson come to the front at that point and provide an explanation. We can put it on agenda as well, either way.
That'd be perfect.
Okay.
All right. Thank you guys for coming out tonight. Meeting adjourned.